Welcome to the ATA podcast, where we talk to former elite athletes sharing their insights and wisdom derived from successfully transitioning into life beyond the game. A very warm welcome to the Athlete Transition Accelerator podcast. Carl and I are delighted to be joined by another fascinating guest, Jenny Casson, an Olympian, two-time Olympian with a fascinating story, a very recent story of transition because it's not even a year since you were last competing, Jenny. So a very warm welcome and thank you very much for joining us today.
Yeah, of course. So happy to be here.
So the first thing we always say is we're talking about transition on this podcast. We're helping people understand people's journeys. We're learning from their wisdom and perspective, but it's always nice to set the scene, to take the guest athlete back to their particular chapter, their particular sporting arena, and just ask you to pull out one or two of your proudest memories. You know, when you look back on, and there's two Olympics I mentioned in the intro, I know you've also won indoor world records, so you've done some fabulous things. But from your personal perspective, what would you pull out as something that brings forth a real sense of pride from your rowing career?
Yeah, I mean, that's about 10 years worth of ups and downs for sure. I think to put a proud moment behind the greatest accomplishment that we had, Jill and I, my doubles partner, because I never really did anything alone when it came to rowing. So for us, probably qualification in 2023, that was a really big deal for us because we had done it pretty much by ourselves with our coach, and we came out with a fourth place, and that was our best finishing position. So we were really happy with that. But prior to that, we had won the Women's Henley Royal Regatta for the women's double as well as lightweights. And that kind of, I think, was the precursor to that fourth place and build our confidence leading into that qualification regatta. So yeah, to stand, those are my two proudest moments, I think, with the double. And then the world record was really cool, but I have to say, in rowing, we have a saying that ergs don't float. And I got those in 2018 and 2019. And regrettably, they never translated into a world record in the boat where it mattered, but it's still cool to have it, and I'm proud of those.
Absolutely. I mean, for anybody, very few of us have been on a boat on the water, but a lot of people will relate whatever discipline they're doing to sitting on the ergs, on the concept rowers, etc. So whether it's on the water or not, to hold a world record in that, they're pretty brutal pieces of kit. I don't think anybody ever enjoys using them. So the fact that you've set a world record on them is impressive, no doubt.
Yeah, it was I remember doing it and I had no idea I think I had a small idea what the world record was at the time, but we had just done the training leading into them, and during that winter season, that's probably the most I've sat on an erg during the winter other than in university. And we had a really amazing training group and everyone was pushing each other. And I think halfway through it, I forgot that I was a lightweight and tried to start keeping up with the heavyweights. And then that turned into a world record. It's literally how it happened. So
I like it. Well, go on then. For us
Amazing.
weekend warriors that jump on a rowing machine and just mess about. What was the distance? What was the distance and what was the time? Because then everybody listening can go out and see how close they can get to your world record.
for sure. The 2 kilometer erg was 6:53.2. I believe it's either 6:53.2 or 6:52.3, one of those ones. And that was 2 kilometers. So set your screen to 2K and see if you can beat that at 59 kilos. So I mean, it's a bit easier if you're a bit bigger, not gonna lie, if you're a bit longer. And then the 6K, so go and set your erg to 6 kilometers and do it in 21 minutes and 44 seconds. That one I think will hurt you probably a little bit more.
I think it'll hurt everybody, and they've not got the weight. Most of us who I say most of us, Carl and I have played rugby. There's a bit of weight advantage for sure.
Yeah.
So when you actually put that weight
Not
differential
height.
in, if you handicapped it and said, right, how does that translate? It's a great effort.
6K in 21 minutes. I think I'll just leave that to you. I don't even fancy attempting that. That would be awful. That'd be
Yeah, it was
awful.
tough.
Cheers. Some incredible insights there, some incredible highlights as well. But I suppose, as James mentioned at the start, that the whole purpose of what we're doing here is sharing the benefit of hindsight and helping prepare those current athletes from those that have walked the path, particularly in your instance, because it's such a recent story of transition. But just take us into that period in which you did move on from rowing, and just what was the circumstances and the catalyst around the reason for moving on from rowing?
Yeah, the catalyst was pretty black and white. They took my event out of the Olympics, and there was really no chance of me going back and continuing on in the same event that I'd been participating in for 10 years. We kind of saw it coming. They were going to do it after Paris, and then they were going to do after Tokyo, and then they delayed it until after Paris. And while it really hurt to see, because I think that lightweight rowing is super competitive and there's only one boat, and I could go on and on about why I think it's amazing, the decision was made for inclusivity and bringing in a different sport for a wider range of participants to be able to have an opportunity at the games. And I think that's also really important for the sport of rowing as it tries to diversify and, include more countries that don't have access to flat water. So that's huge. So for me, the options were retire or try and go heavyweight. Heavyweight is sort of daunting because, I mean, I'm 5'9". I think that's sort of a bad excuse because there's a lot of phenomenal open weight rowers who are 5'9", 5'8", and they just are weapons in and of themselves. But 10 years at lightweight rowing put my body through a lot of intense like ups and downs in terms of physical weight. And I think taking a step back was also good for my health overall, just to give my body some time to recalibrate, reset, and see where my natural weight sits, and honestly just repair itself from the years of, like I said, highs and lows of fluctuation. So that was the biggest catalyst. And then I think also just life circumstances. Right now it's not very practical for me to be back in Duncan training. I have a husband. He's based out of Tampa. I have a family that I've not been with for years and years. Anyone who's been in sport can relate to that for sure. You spend countless hours, days, holidays, vacations away from your family. And if you're a big family person, that can weigh heavily on your heart. So that definitely played a role as well. And then financially, I can't sustain that if I want to ever, have a life. Rowing isn't funded at all, and there's very limited opportunities to work and row given where we're located and given just the demands of our training. So taking a step back also and seeing, what else is out there in terms of being able to survive financially is very important is very important as I grow up. I mean, I'm almost 30, I'm 29, and while living on someone's couch is fine for a couple of years, once you get to this age, it's like, all right, pull your big girl pants up, it's time to go. So all those combined into, a bow out, and it's not a goodbye forever, but it's a see you later for now, and we'll see where life takes me. But right now, I think it's really important to focus on what's immediately ahead of me, and get my life kind of aligned more for longevity than, a 4-year cycle of what happens after that.
Yeah, so yeah. So James and I talk about this quite a lot in terms of circumstances for transition. There's a theme with catalysts as to why athletes move on, and it's either financial or an injury, unfortunately. But your circumstances is new. It's not one we've come across, and it was completely taken out of your hands because the Olympics decided we need some diversity. Let's bring some other sports in and spread this across different sports. So, and I guess as well, take us into the time where sort of pre-Japan, I guess, where you were of the mindset, this is possibly the last Olympics because this event's going after this Olympics. And then sort of what happened in that period where they decided, actually, we're going to go for one more year, but we're going to be in Paris. And then I suppose take us into your mindset at that point, knowing that this was the last Olympics, and sort of where was your mindset sort of through that period, and give us an insight into that time.
So many different things. So leading into Japan, I was a little bit delulu in the sense that I just didn't really think about it being the last Olympics for lightweights. I had a bit of a different focus. I had come back from double hip surgery. So leading into those games, I had spent 2022, not obviously, it was a 3-year quad leading into Tokyo. So there was a bit of a time crunch, which again limits how much you can think about the future, given the speed of which 4 years goes by. And in 2022, October 2022, and then February 2022, I got my right and my left hip operated on. Actually, it's very common now that I'm realizing it. I had labral tears in both hips. They had to shave some bone down and get some ganglion cysts out. It really wasn't too invasive, but the rehab was 6 months per side, so that took a great deal of time. In addition, I had to then get back down to weight for that summer in order to compete. So that kind of ate up all of 2022, 2023, essentially. And then by the time I'd gotten to 2023 and we were back into qualification, it was Paris. So I really didn't have much time to reflect on that was truly the last Olympics. And also, I'd never been in that situation before. I didn't know what my world was like without lightweight rowing. And when you haven't experienced something, you can't really know what it's going to feel like or what you're going to do. I had conclusively decided to retire regardless. And I was like, oh, there's no way I'm ever going to continue. So this is it. And, we'll do our very best. And something did happen at the Olympics in which we didn't do what we wanted to do in terms of our final placing. And it left me very empty and very sad, and super disappointed in myself. And that has this fire inside of me where I'm like, oh, I can't end my career like this. It hurts very badly to this day. And so that's something that I'm toying with and trying to figure out how to navigate that emotional turmoil. But other than that, I mean, it was sort of something you couldn't fight. It's like when the circumstances are so much out of your hands, you just deal with the cards that you're being given and move on. So that's really what it took. I mean, having it be the end of something wasn't really something I considered I had much control over anyway. So I didn't really do much to prepare myself. Whether or not that was healthy, I don't know, but that's what I did because I didn't know what it was going to be like, and there was no time.
And that's a common theme. It's very interesting listening, Jenny, that you're so obsessed in getting back on the water. You skip through those surgeries, and anybody listening goes, oh yeah, a couple of surgeries. And I'm pleased you put the context in of 6 months rehab per surgery. That's a phenomenal amount of time. And then you're getting your weight down, then you're trying to get to the Olympics. So I think it's to your credit. Obviously, we've spoken a lot, and I know a little bit about what you're now doing. So I suppose the logical thing is for you to give us a bit of an insight into the business that you've set up. And I think my second part of that question is, did everything you're about to tell us start post-retirement? Because this is interesting, I think, for an athlete. You are, what is it since Paris? It's 10 months circa out from being in the Olympics in Paris. And yet here we are now, you have your own business. So I suppose it's going to be fascinating for people to hear, what are you doing now? So tell us that. And also, did it all start post-Paris, or did you have any sort of element of planning or preparation prior to the Olympics and actually officially sort of stepping out of the water, out of the boat?
Yeah, I think that's a really important question for a lot of athletes to hear. And, where I am now is nowhere where I thought I would be. I think that's the first and foremost statement that I would make. Pretty much every single week, I had no ability to predict. It just sort of has been happening. And with the athlete mindset of taking opportunity and trying your best no matter what comes, I think that's really served me very well. But in terms of the planning for this, no, I had very little planning for what this would be, but I had an inkling that something would come of it. So with our company that we've started, myself and my co-founder Manuela, it's called Daylilie. We're doing everyday bras for athletic silhouettes. The concept behind it is to eventually scale into everyday wear for athletic women. The reasoning behind it is the world is becoming more fit, more athletic, and women are being empowered by being strong. And we are here to support that, love it, and also just recognize that clothes aren't made for athletic women at all. They're made for small men. I don't think that's a secret for anybody to hear. And we're just going to do whatever we can to play a small part in changing that. We're going to start small with the bra because it's the most intimate thing. And the number one thing that women are like, I deal with what I have and I don't really care about it because nothing else is better. And, I think we are in a place where we can tackle that with some technical features and some modern design. The thing hasn't been changed since the 1930s, so we're not too worried about throwing in some new features into that. But, I can say all these things, off
the cuff. Yeah.
Off the top of my head right now because I've been rehearsing it for 10 months. Leading into Paris, I had met Manuela, my co-founder, through LinkedIn, through honestly a cold DM in 2023. And something inside of me said to keep the conversation going, to keep talking, to see where it led, whatever it was. But I had no idea it was going to be something that I would be this heavily involved with until I got too interested to not be involved with it. And then following Paris and following a discussion with Manuela, it was an opportune moment of which I said, I'd love to be a co-founder. I think this could be something amazing. And, she took me on and has helped me with the business side of things and understanding different metrics, different numbers, different requirements in order to become a legitimate business. And that's something that I had no experience in prior. But what I did have experience in was the networking, the speaking with others, the connecting with others, the, doing whatever you can and whatever is in your own ability to learn and to educate yourself and to become more well-grounded in, your own characteristics and your own abilities to then benefit the company or the business or the workplace that you're going into. So that was something that rowing had taught me in terms of, we didn't always have all the resources available to us. So you really had to kind of figure things out on your own. And having done that for a number of years now, I was able to translate that pretty well. But in terms of, again, going back to the question of, did I know this was going to happen, or had I planned for this? Not at all. You know, after Paris, I had no idea what I was going to do. Again, there were those months every athlete can relate to of just the series of, what is it? The stages of grief where
Yes. Yep.
you're in denial, you don't believe it's happening to you, you don't want it to happen to you, countless hours of crying. My husband was like, oh my gosh, what do I do with this? God bless his heart. But it's just a process. I mean, you don't know what's going on. You go from legitimately being the fittest, most at your peak, most dialed in stage of your entire life that you've been building up for 4 years, and then it's that one race, and then not to mention it doesn't go the way you had intended for it to go, and that's out of your control, and then you're left without your team, without your coach, without your teammate, without being this Olympian that everyone's like all excited about. You're just you, and you have to kind of understand who that is, what that looks like, and what in the world you're going to do with that person, because you've gone from this huge mountaintop to, you know, under the valley at the bottom of the mountain with the swamp fish. That's where you're at. If I were to be honest.
It's a great, and I'm only laughing because of the way you position it, because I know it's a very serious topic, and it's prevalent for everybody. And I think there's so many areas to unpack in here, Jenny. But to your immense credit, what you've just articulated there is very difficult, and you go through, pick that out, the tears, the emotion, everything you said is so succinctly and well articulated of being in that peak state, and then no longer having it, not being overly happy with that final performance, and having the additional sort of indignation of, we're not going to give you a chance to go back and put it right because somebody's taken that race out of the format. So it'd have been very easy to sort of hit the buffers and to almost wallow in that grief phase, as you allude to. And knowing what you're doing with Daylilie, and we've spoken a bit outside of the podcast, and seeing the immense steps that you and Manuela have taken to understand global trade and patents and prototypes and all the iterations. I know you're on about the 7th or 8th iteration of the bra, and looking at this target market and speaking to and understanding what women want and need. And so many things I'm smiling at as you gave the intro. Well, the bras haven't changed for 100 odd years. But you know, as an ignorant man, you don't think like that. And then you listen and you go, right, okay. And what you're doing has so much potential, but it's still only 10 minutes really from the last Olympics. And yet you've built this business. So I suppose one of the things we always talk to people is the benefit of hindsight. And you've got some hindsight now. And seeing what you've done and seeing how this business is developing, and I'm really excited for you. I think it's gonna really take off. Do you think if you could go back and talk to Jenny, the Olympic rower, was there anything you could have done to sort of explore this? Maybe there isn't, but why I'm asking this question is deliberately leading, because so many existing athletes that we talk to say to us, I want to be an entrepreneur. I've got an idea, but I'm not going to do anything with it yet. I'll wait till I finish. And I'm just curious whether you look at what you've done with Manuela over the last few months and think, I wouldn't have done it at the same intensity, but perhaps I could have been dabbling, doing little bits to prepare the ground. What are your thoughts on that, Jenny? Now you've got the benefit of hindsight, having stepped out of the boat.
Yeah, hindsight is a very powerful thing. It's tough because having now gone through, like I mentioned, that grieving period, I don't think I'd be able to sit here as proudly and as excited as I am for Daylilie had I not gone through that and realized, you know, you can find things outside of sport that also give you life. I think Daylilie is a huge blessing that, no, not even a blessing. Daylilie is a lifeline that came into my life at the time that I definitely needed it the most, needed her the most. And hindsight, I don't even know, like I wouldn't have tried to educate myself more about business and about like you mentioned, the patent, the manufacturing, the sourcing, the global trade, everything that I'm learning now. I wouldn't have tried to unpack that because it's a lot of work. I would have started thinking more ahead of I would have started thinking more about what is next in terms of how I'm going to mentally prepare myself for what that's going to feel like. And I think I would have had some harder conversations with myself and with the people around me to say, I'm going to go through something and I don't know what's going to happen, but I've heard that it's really tough and I really need you to be there for me because I'm going to need someone to lean on. And
Hmm.
had I had the hindsight of the months, had I had a, honestly, a crystal ball into what I would have been like mentally and emotionally right after the games, I would have really called on my family and my friends a little bit more because I needed them so badly. And also just giving myself the grace. I don't think athletes do that enough, where when something feels like it's taken from you or something has died, you don't give yourself the grace to say, but that's okay.
Hmm.
There's more to it. And I think it's like anything, when you sit with it longer, it's easier to process. When you understand it more, it's easier to process. And I didn't even think and consider retirement as something that was going to be like a seismic shift in my life. I thought it was just a next step. But
Yeah.
it really is a death. And so I think, and that's a really stark contrast, but it honestly it is. And I think any athlete who's given themselves to their sport to an Olympic professional, semi-professional level will understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And that again, I would have thought about it more, but I wouldn't have thought about what I'm doing, but how I'm doing it, and
Yeah.
kind of the mindset that it takes to be able to make that shift in a healthy way.
Yeah, and I think that in itself is it's very personal to you, but it's great insight because we have so many of these conversations, Jenny, where we're encouraging people to consider what happens next. It's almost like this. Well, I don't want to even think about it. I don't even want to talk about it. And well, that's not healthy. So sometimes there's the seed of an idea that can start to be built because it gives you a focus and something you can switch your attention to. Sometimes, as you've alluded to, it's not so much that the idea is there. It's more about what am I going to do? What is my support network? Who am I going to be around? And this is very much aligned with how we spend time one-to-one with athletes in that coaching space. And coincidentally, well, there's no coincidence, one of our recent guests was Conrad Smith, who had a wonderful international career playing for New Zealand Rugby. And he now works in the sort of athlete advocacy, legal representation, player unions, etc. And one of the things that I came across in the work that he's done was a video and documentation encouraging people who had played in the World Cups to think about what are you doing in the first 3 days afterwards, then what are you doing in the first 3 weeks, then what are you doing into the first 3 months. And I really like that step to take people into the immediacy of it's stopped, it's finished, what are you doing next? And that need for support, as you've alluded to, you're fortunate you've got a loving husband. Not everybody's got a partner in that capacity, so where's that support going to come from? So I think you've shone a light on there. We hear a lot about identity and struggling. It's okay to struggle. Pretty much every athlete we've spoken to struggles, and you've articulated it's like a death. I think that's very pertinent. So therefore, it's absolutely okay to need to talk to somebody and have someone to help guide you through that process.
Yeah, I think Conrad is 100% correct. Had someone said, "Hey, the day after the Olympic Games, it's over. Like it's done. That's it. You can't go back." I think it's tough because I know what athletes are like in the moment, and I know what athletes are like. I mean, I can't speak to everyone, but I can speak to a certain range of individuals where you think about thinking about the future as though it's something that's taking away from the now. And that's so dangerous because you're also the physical you, the person you is also living in the now. And you need to do what's better for that person so that the athlete doesn't become all that you are. Because
Hmm.
once you finish, that's gone. And it's almost as if there's like an ego battle as well, where you're like, no, I am this athlete and I'll be this athlete forever. I think you can be an athlete forever, but I think you need to understand that with anything, even if you reflect on your athletic career, you spent time evolving as that athlete. And I think if you reframe the next step of your career, your professional sport journey as an evolution rather than a loss, there's some power and beauty in that as well. And it's a matter of understanding that and then saying to yourself, what does that look like?
Yes.
Um, am I going to stay involved in sport in a certain way? Am I going to completely go cold turkey? I mean, everyone ends on with a different taste in their mouth about their experience as an athlete. And I think also understanding that whatever that taste is okay as well. You can leave bitter and be trying to heal because, you feel you were undervalued. You can quit at the top of your game and say, you know what, I want to end it here. There's so many different ways that you leave sport, like you mentioned injury or my circumstance, which is like a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
But just understanding that if you can frame it as an evolution rather than what I did, which was a death and a complete loss, it could be a lot easier for you. And I know it's sort of like someone telling you to just stay positive. You're more positive, everything is fine, and da 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 da, which is not always the most helpful thing.
No, exactly.
It can be helpful.
No. It makes perfect sense what you're saying, and that point you made, just diving back into the point around ego, is really interesting. That I'm going to be an athlete forever. Again, referencing that conversation with Conrad, one of the things he talked about, and Carl and I have seen, is there's all sorts of research coming to the fore now that your performance in your sporting discipline can be enhanced by taking your focus away from it periodically. So if all you think about is my rowing, my training, my technique, my times, or whatever discipline you're in, whatever that relevance is, whether you're a soccer, hockey, netball, rugby, cricket, it doesn't matter. If you have an ability to take yourself, mind and body out of that space, even only for half a day a week or a day, then when you return to your sporting discipline, all the researchers say now your performance is improved because you've restored mentally and physically, rather than I need to get back in the gym, I need to do another training session. So I think that's an important point that we keep reiterating to directly address that ego desire. Well, if it's a day off, I need to go back in the gym, or I need to go back in the boat, or I need to go back on the field and do more. Well, no, that's actually a route to mental fatigue and physical fatigue. So I think just to sort of tie up that point, then you've given us a really good insight into what you would have done was build a better sort of understanding of exactly what you were going to do post Olympics, and that support network. We often ask, and we've touched on this a little bit, Jenny, so there might not be much more to say, but nonetheless, I just want to put it to you around the concept of you traveling back and chatting to yourself. I know it's so recent that you finished, but to tap into that wisdom, the do's and don'ts, if you will. If you look back at those 10 years, you said there's lots of highs and lows, all sorts of things you've done to your body. But if you were to go back and say, one thing that's a real do for me that I would say to any athlete listening, do this, do more of this, and it will enhance your transition. And equally, is there anything that comes to mind that you say, actually, now that I reflect, don't do this? And this is just about us trying to lead you into a space where listeners access your wisdom from your personal journey around that do's and don'ts concept, Jenny. What comes to mind for you around that question?
The thing that everyone always says is develop yourself as a person outside of the athlete persona. And I think that sentence in and of itself doesn't give much clarity as to what that looks like. I think there needs to be an understanding that is very, very difficult. And it's not something that you can just do alone and be like, you know what, I'm going to also develop who I'm going to be after sport by myself with a pen and paper. That's not how it's done. I think the best thing you can do for yourself as an athlete, and the easiest thing that takes very little time, is just start having conversations. Start asking anyone and everyone in your network, your parents' network. Honestly, don't be ashamed. Just ask and start having the conversations. Put the ego on the shelf for 30 minutes, twice a week, book some coffee chats, and just start talking to people. Ask them what they do, why they do it, if it's something they enjoy. I think you'll start to understand a lot more. Even if you say, I don't know, hypothetically, you want to open an ice cream shop. Okay, what does that look like? Just start talking to people who have an ice cream shop, have a food store, make ice cream. You never know. Reach out, cold call, cold DM, do what you need to do and have a conversation. I think that's the number one thing that would have taken very low effort and would have taken the pressure off of myself to sit down and sit with my own thoughts and figure it out, and would have honestly put it on someone else to help me figure it out. And as an athlete, if you're a good athlete, you're able to take advice and not take other advice and figure out what's best for you. And you can do the same thing with conversations. There's so much power in, and I'm not talking about, going on social media and creeping someone. I'm talking like sitting down either in person or over Zoom and having even just honestly 15 to 45 minutes of someone's time. It will change your life. I think if you have enough of those conversations and you go in with the intent of listening and you're prepared for the questions, you will get a lot out of that. And I don't think I valued that enough. I think I took it as, I'll put minimal effort into this and take everything with a grain of salt and not really follow up. That's something I would have done differently, is, have that sort of going on the side so that I have all these my own network in place, so that when I'm done, similarly to how I said I'd prepare my immediate social network to help me and my family to help me, I'd have this, I'd have a team of people who knew what I was interested in and could help me navigate the next steps. So conversation are something that I definitely do.
I think it's such a fabulous do. And for anybody that's listened to an extensive range of our sort of podcast guests, this theme comes through practically in every single interview. So we don't lead anybody into it, but it's so powerful for any athlete that's listening to think, well, there's got to be something in this, because whatever discipline we're talking to, they're saying have those conversations. And as you say, it doesn't have to be an all-day event, a Zoom call. You can connect with anybody in the world. And what we always reinforce, Carl and I, when we're coaching people is the worst anybody will ever say is no. We're both involved in different businesses. And my main business outside of ATA is around coaching and leadership development with people. And it's the same principle. Who can help you grow? People often have a name. Have you asked them? Well, no. Well, they probably won't say yes. Well, how do you know? And so we've all got this inbuilt sort of ego play that says they could probably help me, but I'm not even going to ask. And what's amazing about the human ego is if you go to anybody in the world in any discipline and say, I really admire and respect what you have done. I'd really like to learn from you. Do you think you could possibly give me 20 minutes of your time over a coffee or over a Zoom? The amazing thing is 99.9% of people will not be offended by that question. And they'll turn around and say, oh, thank you very much. Yes, I'm happy to help, but we don't ask. So
Yeah.
everybody listening, and we say this all the time, one-to-one outside the podcast, is think of what interests you, think of what intrigues you, what you're curious about. Then think about who you know. And to your point, Jenny, or who do your parents know? Or who does your husband or wife know? Or who does your best friend know? Or who does the neighbor know? It doesn't matter. Expand your thinking to who could make a connection or introduction. And if there isn't one, reach out yourself. And what's also worth remembering for all the elite athletes like yourself is you've got currency. You've got something that millions of people don't have to reach out whilst you're an existing Olympian or a professional netball player or a professional rugby player, whatever your discipline is. It has currency. And that currency diminishes a little bit if you reach out a year or two after you've retired. So do it whilst your currency is there and whilst your stock is high. So I know I'm sort of playing back what you said, Jenny, but I think it's important because it's easy for people to go, yeah, just let that message go in and out the other ear. But it's not the hardest thing to do, but we believe it's one of the most neglected things. Who do you know? Reach out, have a conversation.
And then once you do it, you don't appreciate it before you do something like that. You're right. Like getting over that first hurdle of, oh, I'm gonna have to put myself out there and I don't want to do that. And what if I get told no? Again, the ego is gonna say, you're better than that. Especially if you're like an Olympian or a professional, I can't imagine professional soccer player for the major leagues, like you're not gonna want to do that. And I understand that. The world is so small. You can't imagine the opening of doors that will happen if you make that leap and you have that first phone call and then you follow up with, do you know anybody else?
Yeah.
Because then you don't have to worry about doing it again and you just keep going down that really good rabbit hole.
Mm-hmm.
It's so easy. And I think that's something else for those who want to become entrepreneurs or, start a business, whatever you want to do. You're going to have to be shameless. You're going to have to put yourself in situations where it's a little embarrassing. It's a little bit it's very out of your comfort zone. And you have to take it like it is because that's how you start something new. And please, anyone listening, challenge me with a story of which someone's started from the top and only grown. I don't think.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I like the Netflix documentary that Arnold Schwarzenegger did. I think it's within that, or it might have been in his autobiography. Either way, he breaks down the phrase self-made man or self-made woman. He said it doesn't exist. Nobody, and he talks to, who gave him his step into the bodybuilding world, his step into the movie world, his step into politics. He's like, nobody's self-made. And so I think it aligns with your point perfectly. So outstanding answer, Jenny. Is there anything that comes to mind on the don't side of things? If you're giving people the benefit of your wisdom to say, do you know what? Don't do this.
Don't think you need to solve it all in one day. Don't put that pressure on yourself. Definitely don't think, okay, well, for instance, the way I thought was, and this is like full disclosure, I was like, I'm going to end the Olympic Games and then I'm going to go right into corporate the next month. I'm going to work my way up the ladder. And then next thing you know, I'm going to be VP of whatever. And I'll probably do something on the side. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I don't know what world I was living in. And I was like vocalizing that. I told a lot of people that that's what I was going to do. And they were like, okay, sounds good, sweetie. I don't know why I put that pressure on myself. I think having that one track mind gave me a lot of like confidence and calmness that I needed at the time. I don't think it was very valuable. I don't think it set me up very well for the realities of having to, again, like I said, be in the mud puddle at the bottom of the mountain and figure out over time how to get back on top of whatever that next mountain is. So I don't think telling yourself that it's all going to be an easy transition and you're just going to end up, at the same level in a different sector uh, in a month is realistic. I think going back to giving yourself grace and giving yourself honest time to say, okay, I'm not going to have it all figured out and I'm okay with that. And being able to have a little bit of courage to say that out loud, I think is huge because a lot of athletes probably look to other athletes and see them onto their next career or their next thing, whatever it looks like, and probably rightfully or wrongfully thinks, okay, well, they just went ahead and did it and they did it overnight because that's what it looks like, right? Everything's all about optics and it looks like that. I would love to meet these athletes that did it overnight. Please,
I don't think they really exist, Jenny. I think that's the nice thing about this podcast. One of the whole reasons for developing it is to give people a peek behind the curtain, if you will, to actually hear from so many people saying, I didn't figure it all out. I had challenge with my identity, went from the top of the mountain to the mud puddle. Whatever the analogy is, it all talks to the same problem. I struggled. I didn't have it all figured out. Lots of people talk about stepping into a role, deciding it's not for them, coming out, trying different things till they find it. So lots of people have articulated your don't there. Don't think you have to get it all sorted on day one. But to that point, what's interesting, and again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I know you and Manuel have overcome different hurdles, different challenges. I think there is something inherently built into elite athletes, the ability to just keep going. You don't quite know what challenges around the corner, but when they come, you just keep going. Right at the start of this interview, you talked about, well, I had both hips operated on. It's quite simple, but it's a 6-month comeback. That's massive, really, when you think, well, that's a year there, just getting back from my 2 hip surgeries. I think that does something to the DNA of an athlete, the mindset of an athlete to say, I can make things happen. And that is a competitive advantage once you recognize it and realize it. Does that resonate with you when you think about the journey with Daylilie, which is still very embryonic, but just that, well, we can get this done. We can overcome this. We need to pivot. We need to find the solution. Let's just keep going. Does that resonate with you?
100%. I mean, I don't think I have a fear of failure anymore. I think that's been beaten out of me to, if you look at if any rower out there looks at my history or anyone who isn't a rower looks at my history, I don't really have I don't have any podiums. Like I've gone to countless regattas and ended up not where I wanted to be. And I went back and I went back and I went back, hoping and hoping and working and working and trying and trying. And I'm an athlete that never got to where I wanted to be in my sporting career. And there's a lot of pride that gets knocked when that keeps happening. But once you do it enough, you realize, you got to keep trying. And if you keep failing, that's okay. But keep chipping away at it, keep chipping away at it. And I don't know. I don't know what it was, but something just after the Olympics snapped. And I was like, I'm not scared of failing anymore. There's nothing can hurt as bad as having done that repeatedly for years at a time. So how bad can it be to try again? And I think getting into the next stage of my life with that appreciation, honest appreciation for that, to say, okay, well, you can only fail so many times until something finally clicks, something works. You have to try everything possible until, you get the result that you want. And if you don't get the result that you want, you pivot. And the value in pivoting and being able to pivot after a bunch of tries and a bunch of fails, that's growth. And I don't think I could have learned that any other way than through rowing and through my own personal career. The double hip surgery was at an interesting time as well because we were going through a huge culture shift within our environment from an environment that wasn't great and then working and to create an environment that ended up being so much better and so much healthier for the athletes as well. And so through that, I don't want to say difficult period of my life, but through that difficult period of my life, you quickly do realize that you can take on a lot more than you think, so long as you digest it accordingly. Don't take it all in at once and think that that's going to be okay. You'll break down. But like I said, slowly chipping away at something without the fear of failure and with a long-term goal in place, there's some value in that I think only I learned through sport.
No, well said. And I think just going back to that point of appreciation, this is designed, everything we talk about is designed to help people. And wouldn't it be wonderful if everybody retired having won a gold medal or won a World Cup or won the league, been the MVP and retired on their terms and sailed off into the sunset. But life, unfortunately, is brutal. It's not like that. And so many of the athletes we talk about speak of frustration and don't quite feel that they got to where they wanted to get to. And there's an important process of grieving, to your explanation. But then that gets that point of appreciation and the recognition that actually, yes, to your example, you might not have got to the podium, but you're in the top echelons of anybody that's ever sat in a rowing boat. And whether that's someone who's playing cricket or rugby, or you might not have won the league, you might not have got to where you felt you wanted to go, but you are still the envy of millions and millions of people who would only dream of getting to where you got to. And I think it takes time, but we spend quite a bit of our time talking around that point with people, because that identity crisis people relate to is, well, what was it all for? It was a waste. It's never a waste, because you got to a level beyond most people's dreams. And to your very well made point, you've developed skills, resilience, abilities, attributes that are going to continue to serve you. But when you're in that eye of the storm, when you first step out, you can't necessarily see them all. And so you've very, very nicely framed it. I lost that fear of failure because you put yourself out there. You did it so often. You're like, what's the worst that can happen? I go again, and I'm still alive, and I can pivot, I can move forward. Lots of people don't ever get out the comfort zone to really test themselves, and therefore they never truly achieve the potential in business. I think elite athletes have got the ability to achieve great things because they've already tested themselves to such a degree, experienced failure and kept going. So it is a process, and I think you framed it really nicely today, talking about that grieving process. And anybody who's gone through that knows it takes time. There are stages, but eventually you get to a place of peace and you can look back at that without the raw emotions. And I think that's the journey you're no doubt probably still on, Jenny, less than a year from the Paris Olympics. But I think you've framed it very well.
Yeah, and just to add to that, it's funny because I've also been told and been like a lot of people tell me that as well. You should be very proud of, the level of which you accomplished and where you sat, I guess. But I'm not quite there yet, to be transparent. And I think what I'm working on that is being the healthiest for me is trying to understand why I didn't make it to the top and what the traits and characteristics of myself that I should have developed more while I was in sport were, that I think didn't let me or didn't allow me to reach my full potential. And that, whether that's healthy or not, I'm not too sure, but it's helped me a lot to say, okay, well, it wasn't because of a circumstance or because of ill fate that you didn't achieve, your dreams. It was because of something or the way you were thinking or the way you were training that probably didn't allow you to do that. And so what were those things, and can you make them better for whatever's next? I think that's what I've been doing. That's been helpful.
Yeah, great.
Incredible. And just to build upon a couple of points as well, some of what you just mentioned, Jim, a little bit, what you just said then, Jenny, is you mentioned you leave your sport at the top of the mountain and then you find yourself at the bottom in the quagmire. But that's a journey that you as athletes, you've already had to navigate that. You all started at the bottom. You weren't born an Olympian. You weren't born a gold medalist. Usain Bolt wasn't born the fastest man ever. He's had to go through incredible amounts of hard work and adversity to take himself to the top of the mountain. Now, you leave sport and yes, you come down a little bit and you've got to start again and start finding this new identity, but you've already been there and done it. So it's not this big scary world that everyone's trying to get you and trying to keep you at the bottom. You've already shown that you've got this energy and the will to get to the top. And we always ask the question of our athletes, and I'm not sure if I've asked this of yourself already, but we always pose the question to current athletes, who says your sporting chapter has to be your best? Because in theory, there's a limit in your sport. There's only a certain thing that you can go out there and win. And in your instance, it's a gold medal. In Newcastle United, the team that I support, it's win the Premier League. In rugby, it's win the Premiership. When you leave that sport and you're in the next chapter, it's essentially unlimited. What you achieve is down to you and where you want to go. So we always like to ask that question, who says your sporting chapter has to be your best? And then just a little segue from that, outside of Daylilie and all of the athlete transition support and things that are going on out there, What are some of the other things you're doing? Because I know you're very heavily involved with athlete advocacy. There's a lot of work you're doing. You're aligned with us. You're one of our ambassadors that we're incredibly happy about. But what are some of the other areas that you're working in and sort of making noise and being loud about to help athletes transition?
Well, for sure. I think the biggest one for me is giving back to the younger generation. So I make a very aggressive effort to be involved with the local high school rowing in this city in Tampa, just in a volunteer capacity. But, being there and now I'll be volunteering throughout the month of July at their summer camp and being engaged with their coach. I think there's a lot of value in being an Olympian back at a high school environment. So that's something that I love. And the second thing that I very much enjoy are Classroom Champions, which is a group. I think they're North America. I don't think they're international yet. But it's a beautiful program in which Olympians get brought on to then go and engage directly in classrooms through a Zoom call like this. And you get to talk to and engage with very young kids and just be a presence for them to see, again, similarly to my involvement in the high school, Plant High School here, just see them get excited about sport and see them get excited about the possibility of sport and giving back in that regard. That fills my cup in terms of feeling like I actually did something for someone else. And also I know the value of that as well. So outside of Daylilie and transitioning on from that and being active in the athlete ambassador program with y'all, it's something else that I think is very important because like you mentioned, having gone from the bottom to the top in terms of the progress through sport, you know how hard it is when you don't have any mentors or leaders, helping you get there. There's countless ones that I relied on to get anywhere in my career. So being able to be someone that someone can reach out to, I think, gives me a lot of pride.
Yeah. I think that's that sense of purpose as well. There's those opportunities are around us, and you've referenced two great causes there that when you lift your head, you can find them. And I think there's something hugely fulfilling and impactful when you spend time around school children of any age, because they're so pure, they're so full of aspiration and potential, and they haven't sort of been worn down by societies. You can't do this and you can't do that. So I think it's a lovely place to be for any athlete who has the opportunity to engage and to share a little bit of their story, because you just don't know the power, the seed you may sow with one individual that's like, well, I've met someone who was an Olympian and I could be an Olympian, so I think that's a fabulous another great endorsement of your character, and why I know Carl will speak for both of us. I think you're going to have a huge amount of success in this next chapter. To Carl's point, who says sport has to be your best ever chapter? I think with Daylilie and all the other things you're involved in, it's certainly going to be an exciting time for you. So best place for people to connect with you, Jenny, if they've enjoyed hearing here, they want to hear more about Daylilie, for instance, is LinkedIn the best platform to find you and connect you with you on?
Yeah, LinkedIn is great, but right now we're in the please, goodness, heavens, help us grow Daylilie. So if you want to follow Daylilie on Instagram, that'd be great at Daylilie_bras. And then I'm just Jenny Joan Casson on Instagram as well. But yeah, if anyone listening resonates with anything that I've said or has any questions or wants me to help them find someone else or me to be a bridge to someone that they want in their network, I'm always on my phone, to my deficit. So please always reach out.
Perfect, and we'll make sure we put that link to Daylilie in the show notes so people can find it and understand more about what you're doing and enjoy the journey. Because I think that's quite powerful for any athlete to recognize. Well, Daylilie is something that's still at the embryonic stage. You and your partner are building it every day. There's things happening, so it's quite a powerful case study for anybody that's got that entrepreneurial bug to say, let me just. Not everyone's going to be making bras for the athletic female, of course, but the concept and the journey, I think, is where the inspiration is. So whatever your discipline, whatever your idea for entrepreneurship, I would encourage them to follow you, because you get an idea of what's going on from the very much starting blocks all the way through to the business launch and success. So, Jenny, huge thank you from both of us. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I know people have got a lot out of the wisdom that you've shared, and I'm sure it'll open up doors and connections for you, and hopefully encourage the listeners to be opening their own doors and connections based on your advice today. So thank you very much. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Jenny.
Yeah, always great talking. Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us this week on our ATA podcast. If you found this conversation insightful and it resonates with your journey, please subscribe, follow the show, and and stay connected with us for more insight, resources and information on how we at ATA are supporting your preparation for life beyond the game.